Hi, everyone. It's Naomi Wolf, and I'm here with Daily Clout. Many of you have asked me to report on the Anti Bds Bill, which is also the Senate Bill S1. And bill, there's a very impactful section from page 40 to 47, which we'll be talking about, which basically creates a surveillance mechanism at the state level to kind of report to the federal government and turn in any contractor that the state is aware of who supports in a multitude of ways the BDS movement to disinvest in Israel or in its settlements on the West Bank. So I'm going to start with Haaretz. The report in Haaretz from a couple of days ago noted that the Anti-BDS bill passes a hurdle in the Senate, and Marco Rubio introduced this bill, and 76 senators voted in favor of the bill, including a majority of Democrats. And notably, some of those Democrats were newly elected Democrats who were seen as progressives. They have gone ahead and voted to support this bill. So what the bill does in a very benign summary, in Haaretz, for instance, the summary is that it encourages state governments to demand that contractors declare their support for boycotts of Israel or of its settlements on the West Bank. In other words, that to explain what this means in plain English, which is Daily Clout's mission, if the state, anyone is a contractor. Think about how state governments work. So if you're selling straws and paper plates to a school district, if you support BDS, or if you've written a check to an organization like Jewish Voice for Peace that supports BDS, you have to tell the state government that you've done this. It's literally, and I'm not being rhetorical, it is literally exactly like the 1950s communist witch hunts. You have to declare an oath, essentially, not to the United States, but to another nation that you may or may not agree with or support. And again, we are nonpartisan. To me, what is really disturbing or worth close tension about the BDS bill is that it isn't compelling people to support the United States government or United States policy as the witch hunts did in the 50s. Those did not stand the test of history, but at least people were supposed to be declaring their loyalty to the United States. This BDS bill actually turns people in if they're in business in any way as a contractor with state government. It compels disclose any support at any time, range of activities that can be identified as supporting divestment in Israel or in its illegally occupied territories. So you don't just, if you're a contractor selling straws to the New York City schools, or a contractor, selling labor on the New York City subway system, you don't just have to tell Albany that you're loyal to the United States. You have to tell Albany that you've never written a check, never supported, never written an op-ed in favor of divestment, not just in Israel, but in you can never have criticized its settlements, its illegal settlements on the West Bank, according to this extraordinary bill. So S1 is called the Strengthening America's Security in the Middle East Act. And I want to note that it's not new. It's a federal version of something that's already been happening at the state level. 25 states have already passed similar bills, compelling contractors selling goods or services to state governments, to state entities, to disclose any support. And of course, it doesn't just stop there, right? Once you've disclosed the support, you can bet that business will be targeted or will dry up if you're that contractor, because it creates a burden for state governments in hiring people who have at any time supported, written a check for, voted in favor of, gone to a fundraiser for the BDS movement. It creates paperwork if you're the state government, if you do business with that contractor, hours of form filling and reportage and scary scrutiny by the federal government of the state if the state continues to do business with these contractors. So it's really a very clever way to for Israel to boycott American business people, if they don't like Israeli policy. It's really a way to for Israel through Congress to put pressure on state governments to refuse to do business or to be disincentivized from doing business with contractors who have ever supported the BDS movement, or else to face the wrath of and the scrutiny of the federal government themselves. So literally parallel to how the witch hunts used to work in the 1950s when organizations, entities, universities, even the army was penalized by the federal government, penalized by Congress if they didn't force people to swear loyalty oaths, anti-communist loyalty oaths. So let's get to what it actually says. So this 50-page bill is really worth reading it in its entirety. We'll embed it, as always, in Daily Clout, and we'll embed it with our bill cam at the bottom of this video. You should know that even before we get to the extraordinary pages 40 to 47, where the anti-BDS punishments for contractors selling goods and services to state governments is enshrined, there's some really newsworthy, important, and kind of shocking programs that get locked down. So one of them, which you may not have known about, I certainly didn't, is on page 12. The Space Tech Program, it's a joint program between Israel and the US. It turns out that since 2013, NASA and Israel's Space Agency have partnered on joint GPS experiments and environmental experiments over the United States, as well as over other parts of the world. And that they signed an agreement, which I wasn't aware of, to continue to cooperate to explore the use of space and outer space for peaceful purposes, says this bill. So just know, that's very newsworthy because the space race is a big issue. Daily Clout, was one of the few entities to break that story of the monetization and commercialization of space and directed energy weapons. But what this does is it kind of dilutes our nation's agency. It dilutes NASA. It certainly dilutes our Air Force. It dilutes our Space Force. They're not just our nation's NASA. They're not just American NASA. Now they're American-Israeli NASA, American-Israeli joint GPS experiments. They're positioning hundreds of satellites in space, and they have the power to track the globe. I mean, we're all familiar with GPS systems on our phones and in our cars. Now all that data is being shared. It's sensitive data. It's private data. It's valuable data. It's being shared as if we are the same country as Israel. And it may well be that those satellites which feed data to Israel are over New York City or over Seattle or over Chicago. This bill makes it entirely plausible, as well as U.S. satellites being over Tel Aviv, over Hebron, maybe over Nablus and Ramallah. So on page 14, it says that it gives the United States the authority to enter into a cooperative agreement with Israel to counter unmanned aerial vehicles that threaten the U.S. or Israel. So this is pretty eye-raising too, and eye-opening and impactful. What that means is, okay, Israel can help protect, the U.S. can help protect Israel from drones coming in. And there have been such events, and everyone knows that America has helped Israel with its defense technology. But this also says that Israel has the right to shoot down or to hover over the United States to protect us from any drones coming our way. So I don't want drones coming my way, but I don't want a foreign government in the sky deciding, how to protect the United States. I want the United States in the sky deciding how to protect the United States. So this literally gives Israel a presence over the United States and a joint program for Israel along with U.S. to decide how to protect Americans from aerial vehicles, from drones, from unmanned aerial vehicles. So I don't know about you, but as an American, I find that terrifying. And it's not just that it's Israel. It would be anything. If Britain was up there, if Morocco was up there, if, Mexico was up there, it's not the United States. And this is why globalization isn't always such a great idea, because we can't protect our own people's sovereignty. We can't protect our own people's privacy if another country is overhead deciding how to fight our battles. And another country is overhead also collecting data on Americans. And Israelis are some of the most surveilled, most tracked, most scrutinized, most controlled civil societies. I'm not just talking about the Palestinians, obviously. I'm talking about civil society Israelis in Israel, preamble up to page 40. So now let's talk about page 40 to 47 of S1. Senate just cleared a hurdle. Now it's moving ahead. It's been introduced by Marco Rubio. So what does it do? And I'll call it up on my phone. And you can go ahead and see it on BillCam. So on page 40, let's go to page 40. And I encourage you to really walk through this with me. At the bottom, it says Title IV, Combating the BDS Act of 2019. All right. So it's a non-preemption of measures by state and local governments to divest from entities that engage in certain boycott, divestment, or sanctions activities targeting Israel or persons doing business in Israel or Israeli-controlled territories. So it's not just giving you punishments as a contractor if you criticize Israel. You can't criticize SodaStream, right? You can't criticize Airbnb. You can't criticize people or companies that are doing business in Israel or the occupied territories, says page 41, without incurring these penalties. So state and local measures. A, notwithstanding any other provision of law, a state or local government may adopt and enforce measures that meet the requirements of subsection C to divest the assets of the state or local government from, prohibit investment of the assets of state or local government in, or restrict contracting by the state or local government for goods and services with, sub 1, an entity that the state or local government determines, using credible information available to the public, knowingly engages in an activity described in subsection B. Let's go to subsection B. What are the activities described? So what did I just read? It's not gibberish. It says a state or local government may divest, right? They're cleverly using the same language to turn it against the BDS supporters. What are you not allowed to do without being punished? Activities described, bottom of page 41. An activity described in this subsection is a commerce-related or investment-related boycott, divestment, or sanctions activity in the course of interstate or international commerce that is intended to penalize, inflict economic harm on, or otherwise limit commercial relations with Israel or persons doing business in Israel or Israeli-controlled territories for purposes of coercing political action by or imposing policy positions on the government of Israel. So get what I just read. It's not just that you're going to be punished for supporting BDS of the government of Israel. You can be punished for criticizing Ben and Jerry's if they set up shop on the West Bank. You can be punished for doing what I did on Daily Clout, which is criticize the fourth largest realty company, RE/MAX, in the world for selling apartments illegally on the West Bank, right? I can get punished and reported to the Attorney General of the United States if I, on my own website, protected by my own First Amendment, do as I have done and say, you know, I really don't like it that RE/MAX is selling apartments illegally on the West Bank, right? This says that Chuck Schumer and my representatives in Albany should punish me, are encouraged to punish me by withholding state business from me, right? If I, at any point, were to say that. Notice, the state or local government shall provide written notice. Now, again, this is another really scary part, and this is on page 42. Don't take my word for it. Look for yourself. Albany, if they find out that, you know, I'm selling videos to local schools, right? So I'm a contractor to any entity of the state, right? And the state has dozens and hundreds and thousands of entities, right? Anyone selling anything, doing business with the state in any way. Like I was teaching at SUNY, right? I'm a SUNY professor. I was doing business with, I was a SUNY professor. I was doing business with the state. So therefore, if SUNY finds out, as they did, because I hosted a panel on it, that I was critical of the state of Israel or anyone doing business in the state of Israel, anyone doing business in the state of Israel, look on page 42, then they have to send notice. All right. In the case of a measure related to divestment or investment, and in the case of a measure relating to contracting, of the restrictions imposed by the measure to each prospective contractor, a notice shall be sent. So this is chilling. I'm supposed to get notification from the state that they know what I said, right? And that they're watching it. Timing. A measure related to divestment or investment shall apply to an entity not earlier than the date that is 90 days after the date on which written notice is provided to the entity. So SUNY has 90 days to act, to punish me after they've given me notice that they know what I said about being critical of someone doing business in the state of Israel. All right. So this is like setting in place a surveillance and intimidation system, really, for anyone paid by the government, state and local government, anywhere in the United States, to send them notification in the mail, which is so intimidating. And if your employer is the state government, as mine was with SUNY, you know, so intimidating, saying, we know what you said, and within 90 days, we're going to act basically on your contract, right, your employment contract. So on page 43, opportunity for comment. If the entity demonstrates to the state or local government that neither the entity nor any entity related to the entity has knowingly engaged in activity described in subsection B, the measures will not apply. Super scary. So this means I have to say to my dean, if I'm still teaching at SUNY, oh, no, you misheard, or that report was wrong. I didn't criticize RE/MAX for building apartments and selling them in the occupied territories, right? Only then do penalties not apply. So this gives anyone who gets these notifications the chance to beg for mercy, basically to say, please don't punish me, or you got it wrong, or that didn't happen. So absolute witch hunt. And then 4, disclosure in contracting measures. And we're on page 44. The state or local government may require, in a measure related to contracting, that a prospective contractor disclose whether the prospective contractor or any entity related to the prospective contractor, as described in paragraph 2 or 3 of subsection A, knowingly engages in any activity described in subsection B before entering into a contract. So I've studied laws like that. These laws are basically how you criminalize social behavior. This says, I don't just need, the state has the power and is encouraged by this bill to not just say to me, Naomi, if you want to keep teaching at Stony Brook, you need to disclose everything you've ever said in support of the BDS movement. But it allows New York State to say, and you have to turn in any of your friends, any of your colleagues, any fellow professors who might also have supported the BDS movement. And that is how, I mean, literally, I've studied how democracies die. That is literally laws like this are how you can close a democracy in 6 months because everyone is scared of getting caught in the net. 5, sense of Congress on avoiding erroneous targeting. Listen to the language. They're targeting people, targeting contractors. It is the sense of Congress that a state or local government should not adopt a measure under subsection A with respect to an entity unless the state or local government has made every effort to avoid erroneously targeting the entity and has verified that the entity engages in an activity described in subsection B. All right, so this is nice, but it's saying like the state can fire Professor Wolf if Professor Wolf ever wrote an op-ed or made a comment on a panel critical of anyone doing business in Israel or any activity of Israel in the West Bank, any human rights violation. It can target all her friends and demand that she disclose them, but it should try not to target someone who isn't Dr. Wolf as if she's Dr. Wolf, right? So it says try not to ruin the career and life of the wrong person. That's what page 44 says at the top. Notice to Department of Justice. And here's where the rubber really hits the road. Everyone, America, listen to this. In general, except as provided in paragraph 2, not later than 30 days after adopting a measure described in subsection A, meaning sending Dr. Wolf a note saying, we heard what you said, you better be careful. A, the state or local government that adopted the measure shall submit written notice to the Attorney General describing the measure. All right? So this is huge. This is, among other things, a huge violation of the sovereignty of states. This says the federal government has the power to be big brother watching state governments. And even if Vermont wants to not punish its professors in its state universities for verbally supporting the BDS movement or for being critical of some businessman somewhere in Israel, they don't have the freedom to do that because they are forced to submit written notice in 30 days to the Attorney General. And it's not the Attorney General of the state. It's the Department of Justice. It's the feds. It's the federal police. It's the people who oversee crime and punishment in the United States of America. That's who SUNY or the University of Vermont or, the school lunch people have to report to if one of their contractors has ever criticized Israel or any business person doing business in Israel. That's what this is. I am not making this up. Existing measures, still on page 44. With respect to measures described in subsection A, adopted before the date of the enactment of this act, the state or local government that adopts the measure shall submit written notice to the Attorney General describing the measure not later than 30 days after the date of the enactment of this act. So it doesn't just say you have to turn in your professors or your school lunch providers if they've ever been critical of Israel. If you're the state government, you have to submit written notice to the Attorney General 30 days after this passes, right? It's not like, oh, let's just look the other way. Within 30 days after this passes, if this passes, governments have to do this if they sign on to this. State governments, non-preemption. A measure of a state or local government that is consistent with subsection A is not preempted by any federal law. So prior enacted measures in general, notwithstanding any other provision of this section or any other provision of law, and except as provided in paragraph 2, a state or local government may enforce a measure described in subsection A adopted by the state or local government before the date of the enactment of this act without regard to the requirements of subsection C. That means if you're Vermont and you want to pass a bill supporting divestment in the United States, in Israel, or you want to not punish your professors who've supported the BDS movement, or you want to not punish that guy who provides the paper plates to the school lunch cafeteria, who once at his mosque or in her temple was critical of Israel, you can do that before this passes. Application of notice and opportunity for comment. Enforcement of a measure described in paragraph 1 shall be subject to the requirements of subsection C on or after the date that is 2 years after the date of the enactment of this act. So for 2 years after this passes, people have to send notice to the federal government if they are complying with this bill and singling out people employed by the state across the United States who have ever been critical of Israel. Rules of construction. This is bottom of 45, authority of states. Nothing in this section shall be construed to abridge the authority of a state to issue and enforce rules governing the safety, soundness, and solvency of a financial institution. And policy of the United States. Nothing in this section shall be construed to alter the established policy of the United States concerning final status issues associated with the Arab-Israeli conflict, including border delineation that can only be resolved through direct negotiation between parties. So I think these paragraphs are kind of window dressing to say this isn't a power grab by the federal government, though obviously it is, because it creates a surveillance apparatus in which Big Brother is watching tiny Vermont to make sure that tiny Vermont doesn't forget to punish and derail the career of the little businessman who's, you know, selling paper plates to the school lunch people, but who might have once been critical of Israel in his mosque or her synagogue. And then also saying we're not trying to actually do foreign policy via intimidating Americans by derailing their careers. But actually, it is a way of doing foreign policy by intimidating Americans, by derailing their careers. So we just have a few minutes more. Definition, page 46 is about assets, pension, retirement, annuity, endowment fund, similar instrument that is controlled by state or local government. This is a really important section. What this means is if anyone dares to lobby governments to divest in financial instruments like pension funds for state employees, like I have a pension fund through Stony Brook. If anyone dares to say, you know what, let's divest in our pension fund from Israel, they can't without having to notify the federal government and then being punished with scrutiny and a report to the Justice Department. So even though I'm a member of a union, even though I am covered by the First Amendment, I basically can't, I have lost my right as a former New York State employee to, mobilize to change the practice of my own union's mutual fund, with any kind of shareholder activism, with any kind of public pressure, with any kind of lobbying through my union or as an individual. I've lost that right because they would have to tell the Justice Department about me and about themselves if anyone ever moved them in that direction. All right. So what this does is creates a gigantic barbed wire barrier around the billions and billions of dollars in assets under management in the United States that could be subjected to divestment from Israel, which would be and has been proving elsewhere, for instance, in Ireland, a powerful pressure on the state of Israel to comply with international law in human rights for Palestinians. Exception, the term assets does not include employee benefits plans. The term entity does include any corporation, company, business association, partnership, or trust. That's A. And B, any governmental entity or instrumentality of a government, including a multilateral development institution as defined in Section 1701c3 of the International Financial Institutions Act. And 3, investment. The term investment includes a commitment or contribution of funds or property, a loan or other extension of credit, and C, the entry into a renewal of contract for goods and services. So what have those 3 subsections done? They've said you have to do this. You have to report to the Department of Justice, anyone, any entity that is trying to divest or even has ever spoken up in favor of divesting from the state of Israel, and not just at the local government, right? Because that would just affect the guy who's selling straws to the cafeteria or me, the former professor of Stony Brook, and my colleagues, right? No, the term entity has been expanded on page 46 and 47 to include any commitment or contribution of funds or property, a home purchase, right? Any commitment of funds or property, any loan or extension of credit, and any entry into or renewal of a contract for goods and services. So If you're renting an apartment you own to someone and they support BDS, according to this, you would have to notify the Justice Department that you're aware of it. If you're a bank, right, and people, a private bank, not even a state government, right, Chase or Citibank, and people are trying to get you to divest, your own customers are trying to get you to divest, they can't do it without this compelling them to report to the Justice Department on what their customers are asking and who their customers are that are asking it. Knowingly, the term knowingly with respect to conduct, a circumstance or a result, this is page 47, means that a person has actual knowledge or should have known of the conduct or circumstance of the result. This means that if, you know, the dean of Stony Brook, if I was still teaching there, says, Naomi, we know that you said that you supported BDS, we have to tell the Justice Department, this limits my ability to say, well, I didn't mean to do that. Or I may have said that, but I didn't intend it. So this says, no, 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 you did intend it. You can't plead that. You can't plead ignorance of what you said or did. State, the term state means each of the several states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, Mariana Islands, American Samoa, Guam, U.S. Virgin Islands, and any other territorial possession of the United States. So this ginormous Orwellian surveillance mechanism is not just aimed at these 50 states. It's every possession. It's Puerto Rico. It's Guam. It's the Mariana Islands. It's DC, which isn't even a state, right? And if it's DC, you know what that means. It's every single employee in the District of Columbia now gets to be scrutinized for any support you know, he or she has ever given to BDS, and that information, that event turned over to the Justice Department. And now what is state or local government? And this is the end of this section. State or local government includes any state and any agency or instrumentality thereof. So the MTA, the Parks Department, the foster care agency, the elder care agency, the schools, the libraries, but not just any agency, any instrumentality thereof. Anyone that the library is doing business with, right? Anyone they buy books from, right? It's just an octopus-like bill. Subsection B, any local government within a state and any agency or instrumentality thereof. So it's not just Albany, it's Millerton, it's Copiague, it's New York City, it's Brooklyn, it's every damn city in every state. You can't opt out. So this absolutely takes the sovereignty, the individuality and right to self-determination away. You know, if Marin County doesn't want to turn in its students at the College of Marin who have ever supported BDS to the Justice Department, they don't have the right to, because the bottom of page 47 says that they don't. And any other governmental instrumentality of a state or locality, which basically includes pretty much anyone who's ever done business with a state or locality at all. Combating BDS Act, which is buried in a 50-page bill, which I've read the highlights to you of, which the Senate has just voted on and moved ahead. And again, only 22 or 23 Democrats demurred. I'm going to repeat what I said at the beginning of this. Many, 76 senators voted in favor of this bill, including a majority of Democrats. I'm going to say this again. 76 senators voted in favor of a bill, including the majority of Democrats, S1, Strengthening American Security in the Middle East Act. And I just read you pages 40 to 47 of it. 76 of your senators just voted to set in place a system in which Israeli, U.S. satellites are overhead gathering data. Israeli military is deciding what to shoot down of incoming drones over U.S. skies, and then moving on to page 40 to 47 to set in place a reporting system. And they tried to do this in Britain, and it worked to absolutely chill comment, criticism of Israel and the BDS movement they put it in place, and professors are turning in their students with great reluctance. But 76 of your senators have voted to move along to passage S1, which will make it obligatory for states to tell the Justice Department, the Attorney General of the United States, if anyone they do business with, any college professor, any guidance counselor, any nurse, any doctor, any social worker, any provider of pencils or books or, natural gas to the state government or any of its instrumentalities has ever supported not only divestment from Israel, but also it penalizes criticism of anyone doing business in Israel. All right, so this is Naomi Wolf. I am not making this up. See it for yourself. Here at Daily Clout, we don't believe in smoke-filled rooms. We read the bills, and it will blow your mind. If you don't like this bill, if you want some sovereignty in the United States, then use BillCam to contact your representative. It'll auto-populate your representative. It's at dailyclout.io, and let them know, let him or her know how you feel about this bill. If you do like it, by all means, let your representative know how you feel about this bill. And we're going to embed the bill, share it. The BillCam can be shared through social media. You can tweet it. You can Facebook it. Show your friends this video and pages 40 to 47. And if you like the 22 or 23 senators who refuse to go along with this, support them. And if you don't like it, criticize them, but tweet the bill to them, let them know that you're watching. Again, it costs money to bring these reports to you, research and keeping our platform live and paying for data streams. So please become a member of Daily Clout if you want to stay informed like this, if you want us to read the bill and tell you what it actually does, instead of spinning or relying on summaries like other media outlets do. No disrespect to them. We will do it for you, but we need your membership. So like us, subscribe to us on YouTube, subscribe to us on Daily Clout, and please become a sustaining member of Daily Clout. Naomi Wolf, this is S1, the BDS bill. Talk to you soon. Thanks for tuning in.